Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Tony Farrell, the chair for the Department of Education and Liberal Arts here at Ashford University. The faculty and staff of the Department of Education and Liberal Arts welcome you to session 6 of our 8-part webinar series, The Dog Ate My Mask, Schooling and Parenting During a Pandemic. Today's session is titled Distance But Not Detached, Supporting Students as they Navigate Online Learning. During today's session, we will discuss strategies to support students with special needs in the current educational environment. So, many of these strategies can be used to support all students. Today, we have a great group of presenters to begin the series. These presenters have tremendous experience in supporting students with exceptionalities. They are excited to share recommendations and strategies to support students. At this time, I'd like the team to introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Jessie Harkins. I'm lead faculty in the Department of Education and Liberal Arts and the Master of Arts in Special Education program.
Hi everyone, I'm Holly Lopez. I'm lead faculty for early childhood education with differentiated instruction and child development.
Greetings, John Mendes, Assistant Professor in the Master of Arts in Special Education program.
Hi, I'm Dr. Allison Reef, and I am the lead faculty for our AA and BA programs in early childhood education.
Hi, I'm Jen Robinson. I am core faculty in the Bachelor's for Education Studies.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Tisha Shipley and I'm in the Early Childhood Education Department.
Thanks, team. So a few reminders before we start today's webinar. First, the chat will be open during the webinar. If you have any questions, Tisha will respond in the chat or bring them forward at the end of the session. Also, there will be time at the end of our session today to ask any questions. Finally, there will be a survey sent to you at the end of today's webinar. Please take the time to fill that survey out and send it back to us. We use the feedback from the survey to answer any questions or to improve the series. So with that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Holly.
Hi everyone and welcome. How many of you remember the days of getting tangled in that super long phone cord as you tried to make your rotary dial phone stretch as far as you could into the other room so that your mom or dad could not listen in on your conversation? I did this plenty of times growing up, and I think fondly back to that rotary phone, but it reminds me that not that long ago, I was nowhere near as tech savvy as I am today. But don't worry. You also do not need to be a digital guru, techno wizard in order to successfully support your child in online learning. Just like most of us have all upgraded to a smartphone, digital device, in this webinar, we are going to upgrade your own knowledge of available resources and tools to help meet the unique learning needs of your child. And this may range from dual language learners to students with individualized education plans. If you're here with us now, you have the basics: internet access and a digital device. Gone are the days when you are dragging the phone cord around the house. But my colleague is going to place in the link, a link in the chat that will help you uncover community resources for devices and free or low-cost internet. And this is a great resource in case your home internet access is on the fritz, or for those of us who may be suffering financial challenges during this time. So the internet and digital device are key resources you're going to need to put on your online educator hat as a parent. And as a parent, you naturally wear lots of hats. You're a mediator, you're a nurse, you're a tutor, you're a motivational speaker. And of course, right now, you may be wearing a hat that you've never worn before, which is the teacher hat. And I bring these hats up because there's one hat we often forget about, and it is the advocate hat. Our children need us to step in and advocate for them by speaking on their behalf. Teachers, administrators, and counselors may be struggling to try to accommodate children's individual needs. But like all busy humans, some things fall off the radar. And this is where you'll need to step in and advocate to address those big barriers And they may range from having a device that isn't working properly to asking a teacher to modify an assignment to meet your child's learning style. That's right. Just like there are different teaching methods, there are different ways to learn and understand new information. Understanding how your child learns is perhaps one of the most important parts of supporting your child in online learning. There are 3 core types of learners: visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. Visual learners remember details as pictures in their mind. Visual learners love to make lists, they organize their thoughts by writing them down, and they take notes to focus on a conversation. Auditory learners, however, need to hear information in order to learn and commit ideas to memory. And these children may talk out loud to themselves. They need to repeat ideas to be sure they have heard it correctly. These children love audiobooks. But here's the rub. The majority of children, especially in those early years and early grades, are kinesthetic learners because they are still learning how to learn. These are children who need to move their whole body. They are fidgety, they're swinging their legs, they're getting in and out of their chair. And this is absolutely developmentally appropriate behavior for young learners. So let's keep this in mind as we are supporting children in meeting their learning goals. We may need to step in and advocate for a child when they need a break from a digital device, or when a teaching approach is consistently not working. We may need to download an assignment and add it to a Google Doc so that we can utilize the audio feature. Or we may need to ask a teacher if doing an assignment through an app that my child is really interested in is possible. And of course, teachers may say no, but we need to step in and ask. It is well within our power to advocate for our child. So this is why I'm really excited to introduce you to my colleagues who are going to show you a wide variety of practical tools and resources that you can use to support your child's individual needs in an online learning environment. Please do not be intimidated by the online learning environment. Just as we have moved on from a rotary telephone and seen all the benefits our smartphones have brought to us, I hope you will also see the endless possibilities with your new online learning environment. Jessie is going to go ahead and get us started.
Thanks so much, Holly. Holly talked to us about different learners and learning styles, and these are things that are assessed in the classroom when our students are face-to-face, but they also need to be considered as we progress through this school year with virtual, hybrid, and modified face-to-face instructional settings. What if this current start to the school year just isn't working for your child or your teen's learning needs? For most, if not all students and parents, we will find times of struggle and adjustment. However, if you're finding that there are consistent areas that your child or teen is not able to navigate, it is time to take it a step further to determine with the teacher how to assess and overcome the situation with the right supports and tools. In many cases, it comes down to those different learning styles Dr. Lopez mentioned, the visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, as well as what we call differentiated needs to support students where they are. At the end of last school year and the start of this one, this felt like a mountain in front of me for my elementary age son and my newly junior high school attending daughter. Taking each challenge one step at a time was the best place for us to start. So let's talk about some proactive resources that can help with many common challenges right now for multiple learning styles, all of which are available to you on our open source ed resource page. Resources to try at home if your child is having a challenge, you might start with exploring or requesting a change in materials or the materials format from the teacher, such as print, audio, or extended enrichment options. Take some time to explicitly teach your child those platforms that they'll be using, such as how to find things in their online classroom, where and when snacks will happen, how to use features of a video call, and practice. During some non-school time, walk through that space with them that they'll be using and see if you can spot areas that could be improved. Discuss remote apps and supports for areas that challenge your child with your teacher or with your child. For testing and learning assessment that needs to still happen during this school year, ask your teacher if there are innovative or safe evaluation and assessment techniques that might be tried. Reach out to the teacher to discuss the balance between their independent, adult-supported, and teacher-supported work in your child's schedule. And above all else, communicate, communicate, communicate. As Dr. Lopez mentioned, and Dr. Farrell will cover in greater detail, being that advocate for your child's needs is most important. The teacher will not always realize if it's not working for your child to be independent in that virtual or hybrid or even modified school environment. If you are prompting and supporting almost every step of the way, your teacher really needs to know that. Also, consider the suggestions that we've covered in our prior webinar series sessions to see if you can affect these specific needs and challenges you or your child or teen might be having, such as organizing the environment, setting a schedule, staying positive and building in breaks from physical movement, modeling a positive attitude with practicing self-care skills as well, and creating a motivation system and using praise within your school day. Incorporate those brain breaks and physical movement. For my son, we looked at the first few days of virtual learning and made some major changes based on what wasn't working. We added timers, a token economy for staying on task for participating in live discussions, a seat cushion and a rubber band at his feet so he wouldn't kick the chair leg for his sensory needs, and a clear workspace. And we also gave him a list of things that he was cleared to do when he completed his schoolwork independently. So let's talk about some questions you might want to ask the teacher. What materials might my child need to succeed in the classroom at home, and how can I get these at home? What are some things that we can keep in mind or plan moving forward, both short-term and long-term, to support my child? During what hours are you available if we have questions about an assignment? What commonly impedes successful learning at home and in the home learning environment, and how can I work to navigate those challenges for my child? If your child has a specific need or challenge, you might also ask, what will their learning environment look like, and what alternatives can we brainstorm? These questions, as well as many more suggested questions, are available on our open source resource page. So we know why this is important to support our children when they're having challenges. What if you are finding an obstacle that cannot be overcome with these proactive solutions? What next? You might be asking yourself, who, what, when, where, and how can you get support? First, let me pause to honor a few specific situations you might find yourself in right now. Your child or teen might have been progressing at their own rate of learning prior to spring of 2020, and a new challenge or set of challenges has arisen as a result of the current educational setup. These challenges might range from minor to overwhelming. Or your child or teen might have already been identified as a student that was in need of additional alternative strategies and supports, what teachers often refer to as RTI, or response to intervention or instruction, which we will cover in a minute. And you're not sure what happens now for your child in this setting. Or your child or teen might have already been referred for assessment for eligibility and supports for gifted and talented programming, special education programming, or English language learner programming, and is currently awaiting a decision. Or maybe your child or teen might already have a plan in place to support an eligibility of special education, gifted and talented education, or English language learning. Let's talk about what to do next for all of these situations. We're going to start with the who, where, and how. The first step is reaching out to your child's teacher, teachers, academic team, or your school representative that you've been working with. If you suspect a new challenge that might need referral for assessment of special education or a disability, there are supports in place based on a policy program called Child Find to ensure the rights of your child and family for identifying, evaluating, and providing early intervention for your child from age birth to age 21. Even now during COVID-19. You can reach out to your school, community, or healthcare provider, depending on who you feel most comfortable starting with, as well as explore the Child Find resources linked on our page. When? Consistent and timely communication with your child or teen or your team of educators will keep this school year as more of a process than just responding when something goes wrong or letting things build up. So find out which modes of communication and timelines work for both your family and your teacher's time. Most importantly, the what and how. We mentioned some of the what as we were talking already, but when different learning needs or challenges arise in a face-to-face classroom, they're supported through that process I mentioned called RTI. This can be adapted to work in a virtual and hybrid setting as well. And it just involves teachers observing students and how they respond to different instruction. It honors that not all lessons or ways of presenting material work for all students all the time. And I'm sure you feel that when you are watching your child learn. It doesn't always work. If the class strategy that they're using for everyone isn't working for your child or for small groups of students, the teacher will try an alternative or an individualized approach. It includes a screening, some high quality instructional strategies, interventions that specifically match your child's needs, and frequent progress monitoring. They also use a child's response to make those educational decisions. And if you have any questions about whether that's happening or how it works in a virtual environment, your teacher is a great resource to start with. If there's a concern from you as a family or from the teacher that more supports are needed that cannot be provided in that scope of these strategies that your teacher might try, you or your child's teaching team can discuss a referral for evaluation for additional supports. Remember, this applies for children birth to age 21. If your child is in process for an evaluation already, as long as the district is open for virtual learning, all evaluations in progress must continue. Although parents and educators can discuss an extension and agree upon an appropriate extension based on the student's needs. So we've covered the way in which we need to consider all student needs under these current educational circumstances. Now let's take a closer look about how our students are being served under the services of special education. If your infant, child, or teen already has a plan in place to support special education, which is known as a 504 plan, an IEP, or an individualized education program, or an individualized family service plan, or an IFSP for early childhood students, that plan still stands despite COVID-19. While the team, which includes you, has that ability to meet virtually or in person safely and modify the plan, your child still must be provided a free and appropriate public education to meet their needs, along with the supports laid out in that plan to provide them access to that general education curriculum to the maximum extent appropriate. John and Tony are going to talk more about this in a minute, but let's talk about those specific supports and how they translate to the virtual, hybrid, and adapted in-class situation. Some really important components should be included in your plan no matter where your learning is taking place for your child or teen's educational team. Virtual face-to-face is important if in-person face-to-face is not possible. That also means small groups and one-to-one opportunities are still essential and possible in this virtual or hybrid option. Discuss the options for multiple ways to engage in that materials or curriculum with your teacher and your teacher team, and take a look at that plan of how it should be laid out. Remember that measurement of progress and skills need to be frequent, especially in a virtual or hybrid environment, and they need to align with your child's needs or the education plan in place. In addition, using the techniques we've already discussed for all discussed for all households, like setting up a schedule and a motivation system, you also want to consider incorporating prompting techniques for on-task behavior, for skill building, for both live and independent practice sessions. And when you're looking at your plan, if you have any related services such as speech, physical therapy, occupational therapy, adapted physical education, or something else that I didn't list, ask about new ways to access their services. Everyone has been very innovative on trying to find ways to make this work. So look at your child's individualized plan to identify who is providing those services and connect with them about their plans for providing these supports. And ask them about their short-term plan, their medium-term plan, and their long-term plan, and how you might be able to help make sure that those things happen. Many of the accommodations and behavior modifications can be incorporated into the home. So check your child's plan for their specific supports. But some examples that are really easily translated include large print textbooks, textbooks at home, additional time, additional instructions, concrete examples, adaptive writing utensils, auditory presentations, recorded presentations, visual and verbal cues and prompts, allowing for breaks, graphic organizers, more hands-on activities, rest breaks as needed, daily check-in with the case manager or your special education teacher, a home visual daily schedule, breaks between tasks, opportunities to have de-escalation strategies in place for virtual and hybrid learning, positive reinforcement, and more. Your child's teacher or case manager is your first point of contact for translating these supports into the virtual or hybrid environment. Now, John is going to go into more considerations for supporting students and their special education needs. Dr. Mendez?
Thank you, Jesse. As you continue to explore and pursue new and innovative ideas and resources for your exceptional learners, you may come across this concept. It's just not working. Now what? Before I get started, I want to say it's okay to feel stressed, anxious. I know I am. With 5 kids at home and 1 on the way in October, I certainly feel the weight of this new educational system. That said, now more than ever, we need to be collaborative. We need to communicate, reach out for help, and reach out to help others. Make no mistake about it, you are your child's best resource. So how does this relate to supporting your child in the home setting? First and foremost, know and understand your child's needs. What are their strengths? As Jesse discussed earlier, what are their learning preferences? Deficit areas or areas of development? Use your local resources, supports, and services. If your child is receiving services at school, request a meeting with the case manager to determine how you can best support your child in the home environment. Ask for specific resources and supports that align with the goals listed on the IEP or Section 504 plan. Whatever the situation, whatever's pertinent to you and your child, reach out to the school with any questions and/or concerns. Don't hesitate. They're there to help. Tony will discuss this further when he addresses parents' rights and advocacy. But even though schools may be offering remote or hybrid learning, students with disabilities continue to require individualized instruction and services. So continuous communication with the IEP and support team is necessary. The Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, FERPA, remains intact. So whether your district is offering remote or face-to-face IEP or problem-solving meetings, this should not hinder your ability to meet with school personnel. If your child is using an e-learning platform and your school is using a learning management system such as Zoom, Google Classroom, Blackboard, or any other system, and your child's struggling, reach out to the teacher or case manager. There may be an accessibility-based accommodation or modification that could and should be implemented to ensure academic success. Set realistic goals. Be aware of their academic competencies in core subject areas like reading, writing, and math, as well as their ability to sit still, stay focused, and remain on task. Again, this is not a one-size-fits-all framework, so your child may need additional supports, frequent breaks. Consider their learning preferences and what works best for them. Remain positive and optimistic. Above all else, this is what will provide structure and ensure progress, growth, and development. When taking movement and sensory breaks, incorporate yoga and mindfulness breathing activities. These resources can be found in our open source document, but Awaken Mindful and Activity Works are sites that offer some fantastic free and easy to use YouTube videos that kids can do independently. Educational Life Skills is another great website and resource that offers many social emotional lessons that incorporates reading and problem solving skills. So shifting gears for a moment, let's explore some supports and resources for gifted and talented children. A common characteristic of students who are gifted and talented is heightened sensitivity. Although these children may be able to process information at a faster and accelerated pace, emotional check-ins are a great way to stay connected. These kids are often resilient, often look like they're fine, but they're likely dealing with some pretty heavy feelings, at least some of the time. Take an opportunity to check in, asking questions like, how are you doing? How are you feeling today? Do you have any questions you'd like to ask? As you're looking to continue to challenge these students to ensure academic and social emotional growth, it's critical to differentiate educational tasks to meet their needs. That said, knowing their strengths and levels of performance is important. Communicate with classroom teachers to better understand their levels in reading and writing and math, and offer an accelerated pace and opportunities for higher order and critical thinking skills. Check with your district, as many schools offer advanced learning plans that include educational goals, routine assessments, and leveled assignments and academic tasks. Next, we'll discuss the importance and value of maintaining a social connection while navigating the virtual learning environment. In this time of uncertainty, It is important to avoid isolation and stay connected with family, friends, and loved ones. Check with your school district and see what programs are still being offered during this time. Many outdoor activities that foster safe social distancing may still be available for your children. This includes many school or park district sanctioned sports or events. Stay connected with family and friends by engaging in a video chat. Start a homework or a book club to maintain socialization, but with an academic twist. Consider forming a special interest group or an online study session with friends from school. My daughter, who just started high school this year, she's in a Netflix club. They choose a documentary to highlight and analyze for the month. Khan Academy and CK12 are terrific resources that provide mini courses and lessons that align with student levels of performance and academic interests. Now let's look to explore some functional resources and supports to enhance the learning process for our gifted and talented students. Project-based learning. This is a fantastic way to stretch and challenge your gifted and talented students. Why? These projects can be long-term. They don't have a ceiling, meaning these students can independently use their critical thinking skills to solve real-world problems from a variety of perspectives. Have them plan a virtual trip, balance a budget, make a commercial, TV, or maybe a TV show or maybe movie, create a business plan. Whatever it is, make it fun. Limit instructions and parameters and let them take it and run with it. Keep it student-centered. Give them a voice in the process. Allow them to choose and explore topics that interest them. Let them choose the outcome, how they'll discover and solve the problem and share their findings. This is such a great way to foster creativity and innovation. Be sure to check out the additional project-based learning ideas and topics in the open source document, along with the amazing video enrichment activities on the EdCircuit website. These are such great ideas that are ready for immediate implementation. Mensa for Kids also provides a wealth of lesson plans and learning units that offers level enrichment and extension activities. Now, Jen will discuss some resources to enhance communication with our English language learners.
Hi everyone. As parents or guardians, if you or your child is learning English, or you are friends with and support families who are learning English as an additional language, keeping in contact with the school is important in a normal world, let alone a pandemic and virtual or online school environment. There are a few programs that you can use that can provide immediate translation for any families who are learning English. The first program that can help you communicate with the school is ClassTag. ClassTag has an automatic translation feature. This allows you, parents, guardians, and teachers to communicate in many different languages. As a parent or guardian, when you send a message to the teacher in their first language, the program will automatically translate into English. Likewise, the teacher can type in English and the program will translate into the family language. Class Dojo is another program that parents and guardians might be very familiar with. Schools often use Class Dojo as a communication tool, and it also allows teachers to immediately translate announcements and emails into students' home languages. These tools can be invaluable when you are in a virtual or face-to-face environment. Being able to communicate with your child's teacher via one of these programs can take away some of the barriers that you might feel when you're communicating with the teacher or the school. There are also some programs you might ask your child's teacher to use. If you are a teacher, there are many ways we can still provide visual teaching for our English language learners. Parents and teachers, in a virtual environment, we lose some of the non-linguistic cues or language-based cues English language learners use to understand their teachers. For teachers, using video to teach brings back some of those non-linguistic cues and continues comprehensible input through the use of visuals and demonstrations. Educators, you can use videos to record yourself teaching, demonstrating, and helping English language learners understand the material they need to learn. Video can also be used to assess ELLs. Allowing our English language learners to record a video of themselves telling you about the information helps to lift some of that heavy linguistic demand of reading and writing that is required in a virtual environment. Parents or friends of parents who are learning English, ask teachers about using a video program to record lessons for your child. Above are a few video recording programs that can be used. I love using Cam Studio, Loom, and Screencast-O-Matic. Parents, feel free to ask teachers if they could use a video element of some sort. Having a recorded lesson allows the English language learner to listen multiple times. Pause, forward, rewind, and review the information to make sure they understand. If you are a friend who supports families who have English language learning demands, feel free to help them reach out to teachers about using a screencast or video program. Using video allows teachers to support English language learners' use of listening and speaking skills to complement the reading and writing skills being used in online and in classwork. Parents and teachers, if you are looking for some additional apps for picture dictionaries, there are several available. Some students might need a dictionary, and we know that regular dictionaries can be troublesome with so many definitions for one word. For beginning English language learners, the Oxford Picture Dictionary is a great place to start. An app is available for accessing this dictionary, or you can just access it online. There are also some really easily accessible online picture dictionaries, such as this one. These offer photo representation of words and phrases. This particular page is demonstrating prepositions which are known to be very sticky language points for English language learners. However, you can see from the menu that there are many language points that can be demonstrated. Some online picture dictionaries have a feature that will pronounce the word to students so they can practice saying and comprehend the words based on different themes. These are excellent for students who are still beginning to learn English or need to hear specific words pronounced. With new English language learners, we need to teach them the basic conversation skills or the language they will use with friends on the playground, in the lunchroom, or with friends in Google Hangouts. We can use apps to do this. Learn English for Kids helps ELLs with basic vocabulary that is needed for understanding informal language about school. Speak English Conversations is useful for older students in middle and high school, as well as upper elementary. This can provide students with understanding the tempo of English and how to use conversation in a way to be understood and to understand. English Listening and Quiz provides a space for middle school and high school English language learners to work on listening comprehension, which is absolutely crucial in communication. These are just a few additional resources to support our English language learners as they are learning English from home in a virtual environment and when they return to face-to-face classes. Please do not be afraid to advocate for your child or student. We will touch on advocating in a bit, but asking for what your child or student needs is perfectly okay. Now we're going to Dr. Reif to learn a bit more about connecting our minds, bodies, and emotions during this stressful season.
Thanks, Dr. Robinson. Prior to the explosion of brain-based research, the functions of the brain were thought of as a top-down approach. Learning, language, and reasoning were considered high-order systems that imposed themselves on an obedient body. Emotions were either overlooked or they were not thought of as a brain-based function. Emotions were like a bull in a china shop. They interfered, or even worse, they destroyed the orderly functions of the brain. However, after numerous research studies were done on patients with brain damage, which I will save you from all the minute details, it was determined that emotions were not the bull in the china shop. They were actually the shelves providing stability for the china. Without the emotions underlining learning and reasoning, the metaphoric china would be crushed, or at least left wobbling in the wind. The point of this is that cognition and emotion should not be regarded as a dichotomy, but as interrelated concepts. Rational thought and logical reasoning do exist, but rarely devoid of emotion. Emotion is the rudder that directs our reasoning into the sector of knowledge that is relevant to the current problem or test at hand. So it is really important that you keep your children's and your own emotions in mind. Now that we are in agreement about learning and reasoning being connected to emotions, it will be easier to understand the next connection, which is stress. Stress is a huge factor, both good and bad, with the feeling brain. Stress and other strong negative emotional experiences can actually rewire your brain and create brain damage. Yes, create brain damage. Long-term exposure to stress can cause aggression, language failure, depression, asthma, epilepsy, diabetes, high blood pressure, and unfortunately, the list goes on. Let's think about stress for a moment. Some of you may be thinking that you actually perform a little bit better if you are stressed. I myself am a total procrastinator, and I need the stress of an approaching deadline to get myself going. An approaching deadline, competition in a sport, or speaking in public can induce moderate stress. Moderate stress will release hormones, both cortisol and adrenaline, which prepare the body for fight or flight experiences. The hormones help you to prepare for action and can stimulate certain things such as your memory. When the stress is over, then the hormones are no longer released and your body and brain are back on an even keel. But if you continue into severe or prolonged stress, your hormones remain overactive. These start to attack your body like genetic terrorists. The hormones can take your genes and create faulty networks of connection between brain cells. We're not sharing this as something that is meant to scare you. Instead, we want you to know how closely your brain and emotions are tied together. You can't expect your brain to function if your body is stressed. And the same can be said for your learners. The brain is very resilient and can often overcome negative experiences. This resiliency is often bred from a supportive home life or a caring adult, which is part of why we have included this in connection to our topics on advocacy. If your gut is telling you something isn't right for your child, be their advocate. Reach out to the teacher or principal. I think we've said this in every webinar. You know your child the best. No one can take that away from you or usurp you. Also, just keep in mind that it is important, that everyone is empathetic, not just to children and their learning, but also to them as a whole, with their thinking and feeling brain in mind. You may have noticed that people are talking about social emotional learning a lot this year. This is not a coincidence. It is because educators know that if children are going to be open to learning, they need to be emotionally fit as well. Our open source resource page has many amazing resources available to address social emotional learning, with the Choose Love movement being my personal favorite. We also wanted to share the connection between mind and body as a gentle reminder to take care of yourselves in your circle of influence. We can't change the circumstances of a pandemic, but we can determine how we respond to it. And one thing that has become abundantly clear to me during this time is that you cannot pour from an empty cup. If you deplete all your own capacity and are worn down, you won't have anything left to take care of others. And we know this from personal experience. The 7 of us here have 17 kids between us. And you want to talk about empty cups, we feel you. We know exactly how you feel. Self-care has become a buzzword this past year, and that is also not a coincidence. You need to take care of yourself. This can include nutrition and diet, sleep, exercise, emotional health, relaxation, leisure, and relationships. And unfortunately, this might also be something that you have to schedule into your days and weeks. Just like Alexa might remind you of a Zoom call, she also can remind you to go get your nails done, read that magazine, or take a family trip to the ice cream shop like we did last night. It may sound simplistic, but unless you dedicate the time, you won't do it. As you take care of yourself, You also want to think of the ways you can help take care of those around you. Immediately, when thinking about this topic, Stephen Covey and his circle of influence came to mind. The circle of influence represents all the things in our lives that we have control over: attitude, choices, words, behavior. Rather than throwing up our hands because we can't control everything, think about those small actions we can control. This can be connected to self-care and the care of others. Right now is a time to be keenly aware of those that you love, but also those who fall into our circle. Kids, teachers, the bus driver, office staff. We need to extend grace to everyone who is living and working outside their own normal. Most teachers were not prepared to do what they are doing right now. It will take time and require an insane amount of growth. Ways that you can support the educators in your life are simple. Be patient, assume best intentions, and ask how you can solve issues together. Next, we're going to talk a little bit more about advocacy with Dr. Farrell.
Thanks, Allie. So as a father of 4 kids and a student with a disability, parents' rights are especially important to me personally. And the first thing that we have to understand when it comes to parents' rights is the rights of the student. So every student, every kid in a public education environment, has a right to a free and appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment as possible. So as a parent, in order to ensure that, you have rights as well, significant rights. So here are rights related to students with exceptionalities. So first right is to participate. As a parent, you have the right to participate in any academic decision related to your child, especially the IEP process. Prior written notice. Parents have a right to receive prior written notice in their native language when a school or school district makes a decision regarding special education services. Consent. As a parent, you have to agree on decisions made about your child's special education services. You also have the right to refuse consent, so you can refuse services if you desire. Non-discriminatory evaluation or assessment. Assessment that is not culturally biased or discriminatory. Independent evaluation. So if you don't agree with a school's evaluation of your son or daughter, you have the right to seek an independent evaluation at the school district's expense. Access records. So you have the right to your students' records at any time. Placement. So if you disagree with the proposed change of placement, you can have the child stay put until the disagreement is resolved. So mediation. It is highly encouraged that if you have a disagreement that you use mediation before filing a complaint with your school district. So if you can't resolve that complaint, then you can go to due process. So due process is a hearing where you can discuss and come to an agreement over your child's services. And then discipline. So there are specific rules related to special education and discipline that school districts must adhere to. So when we talk about advocacy, I want to just point out 3 great advocates that I know of. So first is Mahatma Gandhi. The second is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And the third is Dr. Jesse Harkins. You probably know the first 2 very well, but Jesse represents another powerful group, and that's you, the parent. A parent is the most important advocate for their child. No other individual will know the needs of a student more deeply than a parent. So as we have seen throughout our webinar series, sometimes it can be difficult to contact a school or to share your concerns or know where to go with a concern. So if this is the case, please connect with someone within your community to help you navigate the process. So in truth, we would like to believe that teachers and administrators respond to the needs of students in an equitable manner. In most cases, they do. However, there is truth to the saying that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So when it comes to students' academic, emotional, and behavioral needs, who are you going to call when there is a concern? Probably not Ghostbusters. So as a parent, You are the biggest advocate for your son or daughter. It is really up to you to connect with the appropriate school personnel when you have a concern. So the reality of most schools is that teachers and administrators are trying to serve as many students as possible. There are times when kids with needs fall through the cracks. So during my career as a teacher and administrator over special education programs and a caseload of special education students or students with special needs, it has been my experience that parents who advocate for their kids will get needed services much sooner. So personally, I experienced this with my youngest son. He needed speech services, but the school did not identify the need. His mom and I did. So we asked the school to assess our son, and the school was obligated to do the assessment. As it so happens, he qualified for speech and is now receiving services. In terms of who do you call, always start with the classroom teacher. However, if you are not satisfied, and I really mean this, if you are not satisfied, do not hesitate to contact a school administrator, a district administrator, a superintendent, whoever you need to contact. Don't ever feel that you are being inappropriate with your concerns. You are the strongest and most effective advocate for your child. So at this time, Jesse's going to go over some important resources to help you navigate the online learning environment.
Thanks, Tony. I know we've been mentioning throughout our webinar and at the webinars prior to this, our open source ed resource page, and Dr. Shipley's been sharing that in the live chat as well. It's available to you to support all that we've talked about today and in our past webinar sessions. It's a flexible space, it has room to grow, and new resources are added regularly. You'll find more detailed information about all the topics that we covered in this session, as well as webinar recordings, and you'll also find resources related to digital resources and technology, community and help resources, self-care resources, and more. If you don't find what you're looking for, there's also a place to request additional resources be added. Back to you, Dr. Farrell.
Thanks, Jesse. So in summary, just briefly, communicate, communicate, communicate. You cannot over-communicate with a school teacher or an administrator. Always start with a teacher or case manager in that communication process. So there are always resources available to support second language learners. As a parent, you have significant rights. And then finally, parents are the strongest advocates for their children. You are the strongest advocate. So with that, we have shared a great deal of information during today's webinar. So I'll ask Tisha, are there any questions for our panelists that you have?
Dr. Farrell, there were some really great conversations going on in the chat and some really great questions. I would like to start out with Jesse, and it's a recent question that was in the box. And Jesse or John might be able to answer this, but do all parents have the same rights as public school parents, like at private schools? Do those parents have the same rights as you do as a public school parent?
The rules and regulations apply to all students. Now, private schools do have different regulations that they might utilize to make sure that all needs are being met for students with disabilities, but they are still under the same umbrella to monitor the needs, individualized needs, and appropriate education for children with disabilities. However, the free part goes out the window when you're talking private school. So they're not eligible for a free education at that point. An individual would have to seek out their local public school and work on a collaborative approach if they wanted a free services under IDEA. And John, you may be able to expand on that further.
No, yeah, I think Jesse summed it up perfectly. The rights still exist. They still are intact. In a lot of private schools, some private schools do offer their own special education programs. They may have their own special education personnel, and they may continue with testing and the evaluative process. But Jesse's right, exactly how that works. There should be a collaborative agreement. If an evaluation needs to be done, it is done within that local school district where you reside. So certainly ask questions, talk to the private school, talk to the school district and where you're located. Absolutely.
Perfect. Okay, Jesse, I'm going to go back to you because this kind of goes right along with what I asked. You provided so many great things throughout the presentation, including resources. So how does a person go about finding the free services for their students and getting those services?
It's a great question. All of the services that are covered under a free and appropriate education for individuals with special needs and eligibilities are legally mandated, but they go through the school district or the learning educational agency. For children who are birth to kindergarten age, you're going to be working with a specific center for early childhood intervention, but those resources, your first stop is your local school district, your physician, or your community centers, because they all are incorporated in that child find program that I was talking about, where they know who to send you to for your particular neighborhood, where you should go, what your next steps are, and they're there to walk you through the process. And I know, Ellie, you can probably speak to some of the early childhood interventions as well.
Yeah, those get a little trickier because oftentimes kids are not in a school per se when they're at that age, but there are services that are provided to an entire family, the IFSP, which is basically the family support plan, which goes up until the student turns 3. And then after the age of 3, it would turn over into an IEP. So if you're at home and you're noticing something about your child, such as a speech delay or other issues that just don't seem right, I would first talk to your pediatrician, because that is someone, you know, we all have contact with young children. And then from there, they can probably help you find a local agency that can pursue the child find with them.
Okay, Allie, I'm going to stick with you because it goes to another question that was in the chat. How do you know when to step up without being a helicopter parent? And I ask you because this was a mother of a 5-year-old child, and I know you are ECE.
Yes, it's one of those things that's hard because at that age, kids have a hard time advocating for themselves. They're working on getting the rest of their lives together at that moment. I have a 6-year-old at home who basically I have to sit with the whole time he's doing his online learning, or it just doesn't happen. So I fully understand. But I think there was a common theme throughout that just we all talked about advocacy and communication. You can't go wrong when you have best intentions of your own child at the heart of what you're asking about. I think if you start to nitpick the little minute details about everything in general, teachers have a tendency to shut down. But with those big ideas and the big topics that are really important to a child's life and development, they won't consider that a helicopter parent. You're just doing what's right for your child.
Okay, thank you. Holly, I'm going to jump to you. As you were opening the session, you provided some really great ideas on students and their learning styles. So as a parent at home, it might be hard to figure out what learning style their student has. How can they figure that out or decide that?
Well, I actually have a great resource that I will share in the chat, and it's somewhere you can go to take a quiz on your learning style, and then you can apply it to your child. And I really encourage parents to also take it from their perspective, because we have to remember that our children are not necessarily going to learn the way that we learn. So we need to really know not only who our children are, but who we are, so that we can really support their unique needs. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat right now.
Thank you. Will that also be on the open resource page? Okay, perfect. All right, Tony, you had some really great things to say about who to reach out to and who to talk to when it comes to advocating for your student. What is the best way to reach out to the teacher administrator and ask them how to support your students at home?
You know, that's a great question. You know, as we've talked about the rights of parents and kids, in a public education environment, those rights don't go away just because we are in our current situation. And so, I'll just use my own son as an example. So he is getting speech services virtually a specific time during the week, and the IEP is being adhered to. Now, if you have questions or concerns, I think just speaking frankly and directly to a teacher, an administrator, and even at some point, and I know sometimes teachers that I've talked to don't necessarily like this response, but I would say that sometimes there is a need to contact district administration as well. I think you always make sure that you go to the teacher first to support or try to support the needs of your son or daughter. But at the end of the day, and my seat as a parent, I was a special education teacher for many years, and I was also a school administrator. And so I got to experience, I have experience in all three areas. And so what I would say, if you come into any conversation with the idea of trying to support a student and trying to get the help for your child, that schools are definitely on board to try to support you. Now, sometimes they may need to bring in additional resources, but at the end of the day, the goal should be to support the child, whatever learning environment that they're in. So.
Okay, thank you so much. John, during the presentation, you shared some really great resources. So how often or how frequently should a student be taking a break during the day, in your opinion? And should this be something that their parents tell them that they have to do, like yoga that you mentioned, or should they be able to choose what they want to do?
This is such a great question, and really for anybody, right? Whatever kind of child or student that you're working with, it's so important, even as adults, that we're incorporating breaks and movement. There's a lot of different models that are out there. Typically, 10 minutes for each grade level is a good approximation, but it's so important to understand that it completely depends on the child, on the individual. For instance, my daughters, even my younger one, they can sit for 45 to 60 minutes without a problem. My boys, no way, right? They need movement, they need breaks, they need to be getting up. Even if they are learning actively, they need to be moving around. So I would say look for stress indicators, so important. Things like moving, rocking, staring off, even moans and groans, definitely an indicator that a break is needed. And just to be proactive, try to have these already integrated into your daily schedule and just do what's best for your child. And when in doubt, ask them, have that conversation, and definitely have them engage in things that they prefer. If your kiddo is not into yoga, don't push that. Have them do something that they enjoy and something that they're going to like. It's going to benefit them in the long run.
Thank you, John. Jen, I'm going to jump to you really quick. You provided some really great resources. So if I'm a parent, how do I get the teachers to use these resources you provided? And also as a teacher, if we have teachers here, how can I get these set up for my families?
Okay, so first on the parent side, I think it's really important, as we've been saying here, to advocate, advocate, advocate. There's nothing wrong with requesting that a teacher uses those. And the teacher might say, oh, I have access to this, maybe something Google product related. I have no idea what that would be. And even if as a parent, you're not sure what to say, just print the picture and take it in and talk to the principal, talk to the teacher as much as you can, or find an advocate who can help you. Many communities do have advocates who are bilingual you can reach out to. For teachers, please, please, please just do it. The best thing about using this is it makes it so much more visual for students. What was the second part of the question? Teachers, what? Oh, so sorry. To set up families, it's super easy. You can, on Loom and Screencast, Loom is an automatic URL. If you use Loom, you get to record something. Immediately you have a URL, and you can send that out to families in some sort of an email. Other programs like Screencast-O-Matic need time to upload to the cloud, time to save all of the stuff that you just recorded. So just know that if you use a program like that, it will take a few minutes for it to to generate a link for you. But when I use them with students, I used lots of flipped classroom videos when I was in K-12, and I would just send the links to families or send it to the students in their Google email and their Gmail. So there's multiple ways to use these, and feel free to reach out. Your learning tech resource person, usually the librarian, will also have more ideas for you.